This is Judge Joe Brown, and you're watching We All Be News TV, the
News-free Dixie.
News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We All Be is honored to have on the one and only brother Dhati Kennedy. He is here to talk to us about the special event that's going to be happening this 4th of July weekend, rather, July the 1st through the 2nd and 3rd, that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the East St. Louis Race Massacre. They are going to be doing several events throughout the weekend in the East St. Louis area to remind the people of what happened 100 years ago in the middle of America's heartland. So how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing fine, my brother. I'd like to say, Hotep, Ashe Lafiani, Habarigani, what's the news? Assalamu alaikum, shalom. Hello.
I appreciate that. I'll receive it. Yes, sir. So I just want to talk to you about what's going on this weekend exactly and your part in all of this.
Okay, well, exactly. What's happening this weekend, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Let me start by saying that July 2nd marks the 100th anniversary of the East St. Louis Race War. That's what my father and uncles called it. My father actually lived through that war. He was 7 years old 100 years ago. My uncles, they were 17, 15, 16, and 18 years of age, lived through that war as well. And my grandmother, in fact, things were so horrific that my grandmother and family had to build a raft out of charred wood from burned buildings and so forth to escape across the Mississippi River to St. Louis. Now, East St. Louis and St. Louis are actually in two different states, separated by the Mississippi River. St. Louis is in Missouri. East St. Louis is in Illinois, but they're part of the same metropolitan area. At that time, 100 years ago, East St. Louis was basically a white city. Black people were brought in. You probably know, many of us probably know about the migration during the great migrations of Africans, people of African descent from the South to the Rust Belt, to northern cities, the Midwest, Chicago, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Kansas City, Detroit, places like that for work, leaving sharecropper jobs in the South. Or in effect, leaving legalized slavery in the South at the turn of the century. East St. Louis was, what happened in East St. Louis in 1917 was actually many consider this a part of the bloody summers at the turn of the century that happened in places like Springfield, Ohio, and Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, oh my goodness, Louisville, Kentucky, St. Louis, and places like that. So it's certainly a part of that history that has been called the bloodiest in this nation's history. Now, we know a lot about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Black Wall Street and what happened there. It's probably the first city, and I believe it was the first city bombed by its own government within the continental United States for racist reasons by the air. The second we know happened with the MOVE organization in the 1980s on Osage Avenue in Philadelphia. But going back, that just harkens back to that time. During the turn of the century, 1917, about the time of the First World War, a lot of Black people were coming into northern cities, were coming into particularly what today we call Rust Belt, industrial areas in the Midwest, which is how Black people got to the Midwest in large number, was to come here to work in factories and in industry, shirking the yoke of oppression that happened in the South and trying to make a better life for their families here, in a word. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you gave us all that background information. I think it's so important to have that information because we live in such a microwave society where people's attention spans are short. So, can you talk about a little bit what actually happened during the race war? I'm glad you correct me. The East St. Louis race war. What actually happened? Can you give us some examples of what happened, type of forms of terrorism or whatever took place during that time 100 years ago?
Again, I can tell you exactly, or at least the way it was recounted to myself and my siblings from my father. Now, I'm 62 years old, and I'm the youngest of my siblings. And in fact, recently I just had an older brother in his 70s who just transitioned and left with us. But what my father and uncles were able to impart to us, what they told us, not so much as just sitting down and telling us, but it came out in ways like, you know, but when you go to the door, you know, be careful how you look out the window because somebody could be standing there with a gun. You know what I'm saying? It was that kind of thing. We learned, you know, we began to learn. It was almost as if my father, and I'm sure he did have PTSD, what they would call PTSD today. Right. What happened, to answer your question, is that on Saturday night, July 1st, groups of marauding white men were coming through the black quarter of town, where black people lived in shanties and shacks near the river in East St. Louis. And they would come through there and shoot up the homes. Now, actually, this has been going on for some months, you know, ever since black people had arrived there. There had been, you know, attacks on the street and things like that. They didn't want the black folks around there. It was the height of xenophobia. And just as an aside, I'd like to say, we're seeing that a lot today with Mexican Americans. And, you know, we have this man who's running this country right now that wants to build a wall, okay, to separate the two, forgetting that the Treaty of Guadalupe, before the Treaty of Guadalupe, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California were all a part of Mexico. But anyway, this was xenophobia, you know, that didn't want to be around anybody that didn't look like them, these white folks. They would go through the black community in East St. Louis at night and shoot it up. Sounds like the Klan, right? Mm-hmm. Well, on July 1st, they came through. And I understand this is 1917. There wasn't much in the way of street lights, maybe some street lamps here and there, some coal lanterns, things like that. Because in the area that the black people lived, it was quickly put up. They were shacks and shanties. These people wanted to work in the factories and take care of their families. White gangs came through in cars, shooting up their homes. After they left, black men gathered on the street. They decided, okay, we're not going to let this happen again. They come back through here again. We're going to shoot them up. What appeared to be the same car came through, and it probably was. They shot the car up, but this time they discovered that they had killed 2 white police officers in that car. Now, it could have been the same car that came through just a few minutes ago, you know, well, about 30 minutes earlier. What the police did was that they parked that car at City Hall, bullet-riddled with blood stains all over it. Come early Sunday morning, white folks came out to church. They came out to do what they do. This riot was actually instigated by the police in East St. Louis back then. And they came and they saw this. Word came, I believe it was even from the police chief, that he could understand if any white person wanted to get righteous vengeance against their colored neighbors. Well, and that actually wasn't the word that was used, but it was at that time white mobs began to form and get angrier and angrier. Black people going back and forth to church through the same city streets in downtown East St. Louis on the streetcars, some coming from the St. Louis side of the river to go to church. You know, they had family over there and so forth. They were snatched off the streetcars, beaten, heads were severed. Black people were hanged from street lamps up and down one of the major downtown streets in East St. Louis called Collinsville Avenue. They were beaten, as I said before, riddled with bullets, you know, cut up, just, you know, severe damage. And this moved on. It started that morning and just gained more and more momentum. Now you have hundreds, well, thousands of white people in the street, hundreds of bands of young white men, marauders, some with weapons, some simply armed with clubs and knives, attacking black people. When they could find no more in the downtown area, they attacked the black neighborhoods. They set fire to the homes. As black people tried to flee their homes, they tried to shoot them. Many stayed in and just incinerated, you know, just died that way. Some tried to make a break for it and they were shot. Some even tried to swim across the mighty Mississippi River and were shot in the process. This started on July 2nd. However, now there had been conflict before in May, but this was the worst. Okay, it didn't start and end on July 2nd and continue through the 3rd and right into America's celebration for their own independence. Black people were wantonly attacked, found, beaten, homes still torched. Individual black people lynched on the street. Now, at the time, this was a major industrial city or a major industrial town in that whole Rust Belt ethic and idea. And it was called a national disgrace. I mean, W.B. Du Bois wrote about it. There was a march about it in New York. There was so much that was said about it in papers outside of St. Louis, and then the local papers printed things as well. The police even shut down at one point the only bridge to safety to the St. Louis side of the Mississippi River, which is why my family had to, under the cover of darkness, put together, burn pieces of wood, old doors, whatever they could find to pull together a makeshift raft and spend hours paddling across the river to safety. Well, we do know now, and it is an historical fact of what was the catalyst that started that riot. But actually, we also know the truth about all of it, with xenophobia, racism, and the excuse of black people coming in to take white jobs as if the right or the privilege of having a job was a strict ownership of white men in that area. So that's pretty much what we know historically, and what I know organically told to us by our own family.
So
I hope that answers your question.
Oh man, you gave a great answer. I appreciate that. So was anybody ever held accountable for what happened?
Well, there was a trial some months later, and even into some years later. Black people were actually victimized for that, had to go to, a trial and arraigned and all that. One in particular, a black man who was a dentist, local dentist in the area, and an activist. His name was Dr. Leroy Bundy. He was accused of inciting a riot that killed his own people by simply having meetings at his home in ways to better the condition of black people in the area. They said that he incited the riot itself, when actually we know that the police did that. Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting you say that, because I was thinking about, when I think about the East St. Louis race war, I'm also thinking about what happened in Atlanta, Arkansas in 1919. We had black sharecroppers meeting at a black church trying to organize themselves to the better their people, and they, the white folks started shooting at the church and started the lane race war. So you have this instance where you're blaming black folks trying to better themselves that caused this type of genocide.
That's true. In fact, it's been said that whenever there is a perceived progression of black people in this country, there's always some kind of white backlash. And I liken that into after having a president of African descent for the past 8 years. Now look where we are. You know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying. And I also want to ask you this as well, because I know you.
And I hope it's all right to say that on your program.
Oh no, you're free. I believe in freedom of expression. But I want to ask you this as well. I read stuff that said that babies were thrown back into burning buildings by white people. Black babies. Is that true?
That is true. At least that's organically. That's what we heard in our family. That's what I've heard from survivors of the riots before they all transitioned. I got a chance to interview a few people who were still living 20 years ago while we put together our first observance of this. And, the reason for doing all of this 20 years ago, my reason was that, it was a hidden history here in St. Louis. Nobody talked about that. Whenever there was talk of, history in St. Louis or about this city, the zoo is free. We have all these attractions. White people love this city. They say it's a great family town. We suffer the same things, that every other major city does. Homelessness, joblessness, riddled with gangs, all those things. Why is that happening in a place that people say is, one of the greatest little towns to live and raise a family in? The truth of the matter is there's so much hidden history. Especially now after the Ferguson uprising, and you do know that Ferguson is just a suburb of St. Louis. Right. It's I lived in Ferguson myself. I lived in Canfield Green where Mike Brown was killed. It's Ferguson, is just a few hundred yards away from the St. Louis city line. It's that part of what we call those suburbs are predominantly black suburbs in that area that touch the city. And, after that, there was so much talk about healing and doing all this. And if we're going to heal, you don't want to put a Band-Aid over a festering sore. You're only going to get more infection. But let's talk about the history. Let's get to the root of stuff. Let's tell the truth, and we can begin our healing there. And for me, even before the Ferguson uprising, 20 years ago, this was, to me, this was the way to go. Let's talk about all this. Let's go together as a city community if we truly want to. St. Louis is in the metropolitan area is a greatly divided city, deeply divided, racially divided, and class-wise divided as well. And if we're gonna heal, if we're gonna move together as a community of 2.5 million people or whatever, let's talk about what happened here. So that was my reason for even getting started with this in the first place.
Well, I want to commend you for getting started with it 20-some years ago. And I also want to ask you this, because when you're saying all this, I'm thinking about, I had a chance to go down to Selma about a couple of years ago for the 50th anniversary. And it was like a celebration, so to speak, among the people. You had the head of state, President Obama spoke there. All these people, celebrities, everyday people, people all socioeconomic backgrounds getting together to celebrate. I guess it was a victory. It don't seem like it was a victory to me. But anyway, it was very festive. I want to ask right now, what is the mood as it pertains to this anniversary coming up? Is it a festive thing? I mean, what's going on? Has it been very receptive in the black and white communities in St. Louis region or East St. Louis? What's been the response from the people?
Yes. Okay. Well, I have to say that, I haven't been approached by anyone who has been, personally, I have not been approached by anyone who's been adverse to it. When people know about it, they're usually aghast. Wow, that really happened? Oh, man, for real. That kind of thing. There are people who want to participate if they can. It just became a matter of getting the news out. We've gotten a lot of attention from people outside of the St. Louis area nationally, and even some interest internationally as well. So no, I haven't found anything myself except for some positive feedback. Now, I will say that 20 years ago, and it did happen this year. There has been. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I heard on someone's social media, some perceived racist or bigoted person made some pretty derogatory and insulting comments. I know that 20 years ago we received a small threat from an organization, which it was so trite to me, I don't even remember the name of the organization, but basically saying you make sure you get the story right and we will be there and blah, blah, blah. Well, no one was there but black people. And the white people there who were interested in helping to get to educate people about this history and this information. But I'd say the feedback that I've gotten has been pretty positive, so far.
That's interesting that you're trying to resurrect or uncover this hidden history at a time when the country is trying to forget about certain parts of this historical narrative with the Confederate Memorial removal movement going on. You had the mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu, did that very fascinating speech about removing the prominent Confederate statues in New Orleans. What's your take on this now? That how you feel about this time we're living in, where people are trying to, I guess, cover up certain aspects of history, but also trying to resurrect certain narratives that have been lost?
Okay, well, I can tell you this. In fact, coincidentally, locally here, a Confederate monument was just moved. Many people didn't even know that it existed in our largest city park, Forest Park here, through not even a lot of protests, just people saying, hey, what the hell is this? You got to get rid of this. And they just got rid of all of it today as we speak. Yes, I know about what happened in New Orleans. What do I think about what I think about the movement to keep those monuments intact, you mean?
No, to keep them intact or to get them out of people's memory. Like, this interesting thing we have in debate on history, like what you're engaging in is very important as well, because you're trying to resurrect something that's been lost, but that black folks have felt over generations through trauma. Like you talk about some of your relatives being traumatized by that singular event, but it's traumatized generations. That's probably impacted the whole region and the nation in terms of what happened those couple of days in East St. Louis, Illinois, impacted generations of folk. So I just want to ask you what your feelings about what's going on right now, because it's like a lot of mixture. Like it's very, I would say, conflicted and cathartic at the same time. What's going on? Because you won't. How do you pay homage to the past? Also, how do you move forward? What are the solutions that should come out of this? Like, what is the goal you feel that should come out of the East St. Louis commemoration thing? What should be the goals that come out of this?
Well, and I'm so glad you asked that question. We're having a 3-part program this weekend. One will be there will be 2 panel discussions, and the first one will be on Saturday, where a short film by a Los Angeles filmmaker named Brian Sparkman, who's here in town right now. He called me and told me when his plane landed. He'll be showing a documentary that he did. My twin brother and I are in that documentary, and a number of people that we know. It is a sanitized one, and it speaks directly to the point and to our organic point of personal family history. The reason for that first day is called remembrance. Okay, the second day will actually be the ritual when we're closing the Eads Bridge down. It's a major bridge between Illinois and Missouri. A bridge that was also used as an avenue of escape for many of the African refugees fleeing the horrors in East St. Louis at that time. We'll have a ritual there where both mayors will meet. We'll be dropping flowers and wreaths into the river, thanking our ancestors for safe passage, and releasing lanterns into the air, because it'll be pretty dark by then. This one's going to start about 6 o'clock in the evening. That day will be our ritualistic day. The third day, Monday, July 3rd, is basically where do we go from here? There will be talk of reparations. What is it that we can do to make sure that this kind of history, where that's his story, this kind of our story will not be repeated? That we can pull together as a people and let's come to a consensus, sharing the same value system to determine how we want our lives to be, and our children and children's and descendants' lives to be thereafter. So that's what we hope to come out of this. And this is just the beginning of, for us, just the beginning of perhaps, years of dialogue, something that's very needed and something we've been wanting to do for a long time.
That's excellent. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was thinking about, this is like, y'all could be the vanguard, y'all could be the spirit point of the vanguard, what's going on in terms of reparations talk. Because I could recall that, Dred Scott is buried right outside of Ferguson, in the same cemetery as General William T. Sherman. And we are the descendants of Dred Scott. We've been denied our rightful inheritance and our rightful citizenship. Right. So y'all are more than qualified to lead this fight. But my thing is, what does reparations look like? I really do believe that reparations is going to happen, but how it looks is another story, and how it's distributed is another story. What's your take on that?
Well, I'll tell you this, I can no more see into the future as the next person, but I have my hopes for what I think reparations would look like. And for me, that would mean reciprocity. It would mean that getting back what is owed to the descendants of those, for the descendants, for our ancestors who paid so much. I like to say that I am my ancestors' greatest dream, as are you, brother, and all of us. And, an opportunity for us to actually build our own or have our own again. Reparations would not only be monetary, but would also be psychological. There's so much today. There's so much talk today. As I said, I'm 62, so I remember a time when there wasn't a lot of talk or care about, the way people felt psychologically. In fact, PTSD was called being shell shocked, or shell shocked, and all these other things. And now, with the understanding, or a little more understanding of how fragile we are and the complexities of the human brain and what happens with personality. Reparations would mean that, for me, that, at the hands of the corporations who actually run this country and who built their wealth in the backs of the poor in this country. An opportunity for all of us, for every race, for everybody, to get the psychological help that we need. Black people, first of all, suffer from a psychological trauma and a racial memory. People say, how come black folks don't trust police? Well, in our racial memory, we remember our great grandparents, and I was just born 90 years after slavery. Mm-hmm. We remember that to talk to a police officer meant that you could be sold into slavery or sold back into slavery. Right. There was a law. That allowed law enforcement officials to apprehend black people and send them to the horrors of slavery. Just because it's a law, don't make it right. Don't make it ethical. I'd like to see us paid back for that. And again, not just monetarily, but in so many ways, that I can't think of it right now while I'm talking to you, Brother Herb.
No, it's understandable. It's just so much to take on because it's been a generation's fight. I mean, I can recall I'm in Tennessee right now. One of the people that led the trial for reparations was a former enslaved black woman named Callie House. So you had former enslaved black folks leading the charge for reparations. They wanted demanded we got that Black History Museum in D.C. because you had black Civil War veterans that wanted a museum in the nation's capital that talks about our story. So our ancestors planted those seeds.
Yes, indeed. Yes, they did. We've done so much, and our ancestors have done so much, even with Memorial Day started by African American children.
Well, that's what we don't really know, man. I think it's so important that what y'all doing. But my thing is like, you have issues with some of the educators, like black educators. I mean, kids are not knowing this stuff. Like I went to Ferguson and I experienced firsthand what was going on. It was great to see your young people so passionate and so committed, but at the same time, they lack knowledge of self. It's not their fault because they don't know the history. It happened even 50, 20 years before that.
Oh, yeah. And
so, I mean, how will y'all reach the kids? How would it be to reach the children right now? What is the...
as a former...
I'm listening. No, go ahead. You can answer it.
Okay. Well, as a former educator, I can tell you this. I worked for years as an administrator with we call community education. I know they had it in Memphis too. We would take for a while anyway. We would take elementary and even some high schools, and open them on the weekends and have them open in the evening for evening classes and opportunities for neighborhood association meetings and ward meetings and so forth, and African dance classes, martial arts classes, millinery classes, upholstery, things like that. Even open recreation and basketball, drama, all that kind of stuff. I can tell you, children, and it is our fault. Children not knowing who they are, not knowing our history, is by design. Okay, we live in a culture that, first of all, the public schools, one of the ideas that they decided to use with public schools is that would be a place to train the future workers, and that the preparatory schools and the rich white children and decidedly male who were able to go to the Ivy League schools were trained to be the captains of industry and our bosses. So they were taught that. We were trained to be their workers, and they were taught to be our bosses. So it's all by design anyway. What we have to do, and of course, notwithstanding the whole school to prison pipeline, we have to learn. I would love to go back to the old guild teaching that the old guild learning in Africa. In fact, I teach African drumming. Traditional African drumming, and it's all by guild, not the classroom setting. You come into my setting, and I'll come to yours. You have to be interested in what you do. We have to share the same value system. You have to learn what that value system is. Yes, black children don't know our history. I just lost a niece the other night.
Sorry to hear the Michael.
She was 14 years old to foul play just a couple of nights ago. And, going to her balloon, releasing and all of that. It just reminded me of how far we have to go. But then I had to tell myself how far we've been and where we've come to. I hear black people say a lot about well, look at the Chinese, look what they did, look at how these Mexicans, and they all stick together and blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you something. No Chinese, no Mexican, no Indian from India, nobody from the Middle East. Nobody suffered what our ancestors did. And I'm talking about just like Dr. Naim Akbar, who wrote a book that said, Breaking the Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery. Right. I mean, to turn someone into a slave, you have to make them less than human. That takes generations to do. You can do it in 5 minutes, but you want to do it over generation. And they were successful at that. But look, there are people that think like you do, Brother Herb, people that think like me. We've seen black people do so many amazing things and always have, to the point that we expect that. I'd say that we've done damn well under the circumstances. And I wonder if anybody else could do the same thing under those same circumstances. No, I don't think that, that black folks are lazy and shiftless or none of those things. And if you're the kind of person that buys into that, like our young people now are buying into, a culture that rewards bad behavior, like the Real Housewives of anything you'll see on TV, or Love and Hip Hop, but everybody's always got to be the B word, and there always has to be some adversarial behavior. And that's a culture which has been inherently against us, pushing to our children and to the weak-minded adults that this is who you are, when we actually know who we are. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We can take back our own images. I think we need to hold those television and media companies and all that accountable, and even the music industry. Hold them accountable. Hold everybody accountable when it comes to us, because this stuff is real to us. Just like the brother Tech Nine from Kansas City said, he said, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. Well, I'm going to tell you, I believe in my people, and I'm very sensitive about that. I hope I answered your question in there somewhere.
You definitely answered my question. I'm glad. I mean, you are on the front lines fighting for our people. And I was just thinking about that because I had saw a gangland episode on St. Louis about the St. Louis gangs. And like they said, they didn't really have a gang culture like that. First, they were breakdancers, as the narrative goes. Then they saw the movie Colors. A white Hollywood produced movie called Colors. I remember that movie came out. I didn't know about no Bloods and Crips. I saw Colors. Or the movie Scarface.
Really?
I didn't know about, because they want to blame Tookie Williams, but he was in prison for half of his life. So what was more powerful, Tookie Williams, the gang leader from L.A., or the movie Colors that was showing all these movie theaters across the country in the inner city back in the late 80s? Who knew about Bloods and Crips? There were street gangs in L.A. There wasn't no national entity until the media pushed them out there.
I would like to say this to you, brother, and that is to say that gangs in urban settings are nothing new. Mm-hmm. And I've already told you how old I am. There were gangs when I was a child. There were gangs before I was a child. The street gangs in Los Angeles are generational, particularly among the Mexican population. And in New York, generations of it. We've had them in our families, all that. Now, they weren't all called Crips. They weren't called Bloods. We had names like the Lords and the Turks and the Termites and the Emeralds and I'm just talking about St. Louis gangs right now. And I'm talking about a history that I know of for at least 70 years. I have lived and still live in the North Side community in the inner city of St. Louis. I've lived in the suburbs once, and that's when I was married, and it was a black suburb, Mm-hmm. But I'm back, and I'm black, and I love to say that. But it's gangs like disenfranchisement, gangs like black-owned businesses have been a part of the urban landscape in every city in the U.S., Memphis as well. But I'll say that the proliferation of the media proliferation of gang culture is what's new. They've suddenly all become the same. Each gang in its own place had their own different style, their own different culture, if you will. They behaved in different ways. Now everything's cuz or blood, or at least this is where it was 25 years ago. I don't know the new jargon for all that now. It's just a big proliferation of that, and the drive-by and blah, blah, blah. But we have to remember who started the first drive-bys. And those are white gangsters driving by and shooting each other up, in cities like Chicago, New York, and Memphis, and St. Louis, and other places like that. So I find that for me, the gang culture right now emulates. It mainly emulates the white malevolence. I have to say, the ego, misogyny, sexism, all those things. It's a big proliferation of the wrong side of testosterone. Ain't nothing wrong with testosterone, but in the hands of a group of people who are the youngest race one of the youngest races on the planet, being a young kid bullying every other nation around, there's something wrong there, So gangs ain't nothing new. They're just not. Often they were formed to protect the community from outside influences, often even from the police. Right. But right now they've been co-opted, just like rap music has, just like jazz was, just like African culture was. They've been co-opted and turned around and sold back to us through cinema and music, and that becomes a problem. Now, I know I'm to talk about the East St. Louis race riots, but brother, to me, all things are connected, and we can go on like this for hours.
But yeah, you know what? It speaks to what you said. We got to control that narrative. We got to take back our drum. We got to take back our song. And that's what you're talking about this weekend. We got to take back that narrative. Cause I think a lot of times they want us to be victimized. We should be the victim. We should be resurrecting the ways of the righteous ancestors and not focusing on so much the devil, because the devil gonna be the devil. But you should never be ashamed to shame the devil by taking control of your own narrative. But I think that speaks to what y'all are doing this weekend. Y'all trying to take that narrative back and tell it on your terms and amplify it among our people. And I want to ask you this: what is the official body count from East St. Louis race war? What is the actual? What do you think is the actual body count versus the official? I guess.
Okay, I'll start by by saying that the first account I read, I think it was in Dr. Elliot Rudwick's book, was that he said what was printed was 39 people, and then I read other accounts where it gone up to closer to 400. We may never know. We know that the bodies are found in the Cahokia Creek area of East St. Louis. The bodies that were lost to the river of people who desperately tried to swim across to get away from the carnage and the violence that was happening there. We may never know that, but I'd say it's well into the hundreds. That's for sure.
I believe that too. And also, have any white person confess, or any descendants of the white people who actually created the war, have they come forth and offered their insights or condolences or whatever? Has that ever happened to your knowledge?
Well, not in any big way that I'm aware of at this time. I did hear about a man who said that his father, his grandfather, was a police officer in St. Louis at the time, which man lived in a rural area in southern Illinois, that he felt bad about what happened, but he'd heard those stories. I haven't been able to stay in touch with him. I'm sorry, to get in touch with him. That's what it was. This information was given to me, and I wasn't able to do that. I'd like to explore that with him further, to see what he knows and what was said to him. But again, I'd like to say I received nothing but, I'd say, very affirmative feedback from the movements that we're trying to make. I also want to say that there are two organizations right now working to get this information out about this particular our story or history, if you will. That's the Mayor's Commission in East St. Louis. They formed a commission of people who right now are having a series of events during the same weekend and have had some this past winter and the spring. And then there's the organization that I had called the Committee for Historical Truth. We actually began ours in 1997. And we gained momentum in just getting the information out. At some point, we're looking for it being taught in the public school system here. I think this is something that we all really need to know. And, we'll know and appreciate the traditional greatness of our ancestors and thereby see it in ourselves.
It's like you very qualified for this. I know you told me you interviewed some of the survivors. Now they're no longer with us, probably 20 years later. But did you record them? Are you interested in writing a book about it or making a documentary yourself?
Actually, and thank you for asking me that, brother. People have asked me that before. It takes a special kind of energy to be a writer. I'm a musician, And not an academician, I can tell you that. No, I did not. Actually, I did. I had a small tape recorder with me, and when permitted, when I asked, when I asked appropriately, a couple of them did let me tape what they had to say. Forgive me, my brother, and I've had to kick myself for the rest of my life about this. But those small cassette tapes, those 1997 cassette tapes, I have no idea where they were. I've been through 2 moves since then.
Wow.
But their words stick in my mind. I did take notes. I remember what they said, and they said it not only to me but to others on the committee as well. Some of what they said, I was able to steer local media to them, and much of what they said is also in print in the archives of some of the local newspapers here. But I have nothing of my own, unfortunately.
Well, the thing about it is, I've been there before as well with lost archival material, but you are such a natural storyteller. I mean, you know how to tell a story. I mean, I'm just listening to you talking about this stuff. You make it so plain and so accessible to people. You got a gift. So, I mean, you got all the technology. You can figure out a way to tell a story. It could be a song. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you'll figure out a way to do it. But what is the best way for folks to find out more information about what's going on this weekend and ongoing events?
Okay. All righty. But before I tell you that, I want to tell you that I do have some tutors. I have some grandchildren who they've been tutoring me on this Android phone. So. Oh,
that's good. They're going to help you use them. They got them apps and everything. Man, people that made Academy Award-winning movies on their iPhone. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I saw one. I like to tell people a little over 20 years ago, I helped. There was a woman named Diane Shelton had a company called Computer Tots, and when computers were growing in suburban schools, largely suburban white schools here in the St. Louis area, the city schools were left out of that whole technology thing. When she made sure that black children in the inner city would learn about computers. Now, this is maybe 25 years ago or so. Me being a coordinator at a community education center helped her out with that. I wanted to do the same thing and make sure the children in our community on the west side got that information. Didn't know much about computers myself. In fact, I tell people when I was in the Army, I was a tank commander, and we had a brand new tank. What was it? It was called the M60A1 series tank. Tank had a computer in it the size of 2 washing machines. All right, today they're just chips. But I got to tell you, they I fought, as she did, to make sure that our children had access to that technology. It's ironic that now those children as adults are teaching me how to use this new technology. That's really something.
But you invested in them. It's like a full circle thing. You invested in our people, and now they're helping you. That's how it's a village mentality.
Yes.
That's the African way. That's a rite of passage. I mean, that's what we're forgetting. We forgot that we knew.
Yeah.
So you paid it forward. That was brilliant what you did.
Well, thank you.
But now you look out for our people. They're looking out for you. That's how young people look. The gangs used to help guard the older people, right? The gangs were the one that protected the village at one point. And we were sticking in our African mindset. But now, I mean, we got to go back to who we are. That's why it's so important that you're doing what you're doing. Because now these young folks that you invested in when they were little pups, they are helping you to spread this message about a story that needs to be told about our ancestors, so we will never forget.
Oh yeah,
this is God's work. What y'all doing? This is God's work. And sometimes people ain't gonna understand it. Sometimes your own family don't understand. They think you're crazy. Well, they think I'm crazy. But but sometimes your own people don't understand that you're trying to help them. That you're trying to build this ark for them. It's not for you. You proved it right there. What you just told me.
No, well, thank you so much for pointing that out. And I do believe that too. I do believe that it's God's work, and it's working that way. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but we need a rites of passage. You created a rites of passage for the young folks to learn. We need that. We need that back. We don't have that no more in our community like we should. It's not promoted.
Now, we do have rites of passage organizations here in the city of St. Louis.
I don't mean to say that. I don't mean to broad brush. You're right. But I mean, it sounds like being better known and amplified across the whole. That's what I'm talking about. It's not better known like it should be. Put it that way.
Right. And I agree. We need our own Ivy League teaching, teaching us to be the leaders of our own destiny and not to be the workers for someone else, or some other entity or some corporation, that ultimately hurts us anyway. So, yes, I do appreciate that. And I'm so glad that we're on the same sheet of music.
Oh, yeah, it was good. Yeah, I actually went to, the interesting, I call Missouri misery. I went to WashU back at about almost 15 years ago. I went to WashU. I didn't know about Ferguson.
That people here call it that too. we call it misery as well.
Yeah, but the black folks that know, because it's funny. We come into St. Louis, off I-55, whatever. You go in downtown, the shiniest thing is not the arch, it's that old courthouse where they denied for Dred Scott his human rights. That thing they keep preserved. They let you know what time it is. I mean, you got the Conservative Citizen Council. That's their headquarters in St. Louis. That's the White Citizen Council. They headquarters. That's white supremacist headquarters right there, the Midwest. But, it's so many fascinating black folks came out that area that have contributed so much to our society and to our culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the real folk tales, I'm from St. Louis. Stagger Lee, Frankie and Johnny, these are real black folks. They are buried in St. Louis. I know. We think it's folk tales.
My sister was born in St. Mary's Infirmary, the very hospital that Billy Lyons was taken to after being shot and killed by the man they called Stagger Lee, which was not his real name. And then that where Johnny was taken to, which was not his real name, who was shot and killed by Frankie.
Yeah, I think it was Alan Brenham or something like that. Alan Brenham or something. Because she lived a long time. She actually sued the white folks who took her story and turned it into songs and musicals. And she never won, but she actually sued them. She lived well into the 20th century.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but she died. I won't say she died in a insane asylum in Washington State, but it's a fascinating story after her life, after what happened in, I guess, 1899. I mean, it consumed most of her life.
Oh yeah, that was the turn of the century anyway. We lived with my grandfather was born in 1883. He died when I was in high school at 18.
Wow.
Before I went in the Army. So yeah, that's our history is so close, and particularly in my family, we're not that far removed from what people would consider historical times.
Right.
And this is one of the greatest historical times I think we're living in right now.
I agree with you.
I feel so invigorated to be in these times right now. It's time to change, and we're actually seeing it right now. And I'd love taking part in it, And I so appreciate you calling me.
It's an honor, man. What is the best way, to find out more about what you're doing and what everybody's doing concerning East St. Louis, Race War commemoration and other things? How can we keep up?
Okay, that's right. Okay, you did ask about that. I forgot. There is a Progressive Emporium bookstore. It's right now the only left standing black-owned bookstore in the city of St. Louis.
Wow, one of the few in the country, probably. Really, be honest with you. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
One of the few probably still left in the country. One of the handful still left in the country.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! I remember many of them. Hidiana in New Orleans, Ipe in Chicago, Hakeem's Book in Philadelphia,
right?
The Aquarium in Los Angeles, the East in Brooklyn, New York. I mean, there were so many, and we were all connected. Culturally speaking, in Kansas City, and I don't remember the name of the one in Memphis. It was right off Danny Thomas. I don't remember the name of that one, but.
I know it's about
I used to play
it. Wow.
Yeah. I used to play it with a band, and we would come down and play at a place called Rum Boogie's on Beale. I don't even know.
Yeah, Rum Boogie's still. Rum Boogie Cafe still there. Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, that was some years back. And I worked with Yodi, Young Disciples Incorporated, the Funky United Nation. We would go down and record at Stax back in the early 70s.
Wow. Okay.
That was a lot of fun. We'd jump into that van on the weekends after school and just, ride on down to Memphis, just a 4-hour drive,
Wow.
I really fell in love with Memphis in those days.
It's funny how, Memphis got connections everywhere. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I always felt a real connection between the two cities. They both sit on the Mississippi, just like that. I don't know. Are you calling out of Memphis or somewhere else?
I'm in Memphis right now. I'm talking to you out of Memphis.
Oh, okay. Memphis. Okay. That's right. Name for the great city of Memphis and Connect. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us don't know that, though. We don't know how great we really are. It's like, the
That's
white
true.
folks that founded these towns, they know who we are, but we don't know who we are. That's the thing. I ain't talking about the white folks who think they're white. I'm talking about the real white folks who set policy and conquer lands and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That control Wall Street. Those white folks, they know who we are. They stole our narrative, man. They stole our history. They stole everything, but we taught them everything. I guess we gave them stuff too. It's our fault too. We gave them stuff, and they use it against us.
Oh yeah,
we got to take ownership over that.
and all the secrets. Yeah, you know. We learned a lot there. Let's hope that what we learned prevents us from having to take such a fall again in the future. It's so good to know your past. You know,
it definitely is. Because the past has never passed. Like William Faulkner said, the past has never passed. Like the ancestors still here. They ain't never went nowhere. That's what we don't understand. They still here with us.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we're getting these stories out like the St. Louis Race War.
Oh, that's true. Will you be here this weekend?
I'm trying to see. I got some. It's like you said. These are very exciting times. I'm on the fence. I might be there, and I'm there. I'm definitely look you up. I'm on the fence about it. I got some things coming up, but this was so important to me that I had to promote because people need to know about this. People need to know about these stories.
They do.
And they affect us. I just came a couple weeks ago. I went to a place called Alamo, Tennessee. They had a lynching ceremony commemoration for a young black man who was lynched back there in 1929. And I met his great niece, whose grandfather was his brother. And she said that after that happened, the family had to leave Tennessee, and they went up north to, I believe, Connecticut. She said that her daughter said that her grandfather, her mother's father, could not look at a white woman in the eye for the rest of his life. Now, that happened in 1929, and he died in 2001. So for the rest of his life, because of what happened to his brother who was accused by a white woman, they thought that the white woman accused him of raping her, but he worked for the white woman, and she was knocked unconscious, and she called his name, I believe. But she tried to save his life, but it took no avail. The white man dragged him out to jail and killed him and hanged him at the age of 19. His name was Joe Boxley. They gave him two choices. They said, you could jump off this wagon and hang yourself, or we'll cut your penis off, castrate you. So he decided to jump out the wagon, and they took pictures of it. And actually, what's fascinating to me is the guy who organized the commemoration. His uncle, he's a white guy, he's a lawyer. His uncle was the sheriff of the county at the time, and he was responsible for the guy's well-being and safety in the jail cell. And then the county historian, her father owned the property at the time, and she had the only known photos of the lynching in her possession. And she shared it with us. And what the thing about white folks was an interest to me. Now, your uncle is the sheriff of the town. You got pictures of white men around his black body dangling like strange fruit from this tree. And yet none of y'all know who the white folks who did it. And then y'all say stuff like, oh, they dead now. It don't make a difference. Say, we should know their names for posterity. Why can't we know their names? Why are y'all afraid why are y'all still protecting these people that you call relatives, these monsters?
I mean, for decades, the Jewish Defense League looked for the Nazis.
They still looking for them, right? They got folks in their 90s, almost 100 years old, standing trial. But yeah, they want us to forget about what happened last week. This is insanity, man.
We're the only ones who, let bygones be bygones. Yeah, we'd be like the only ones to be doing that, But that ain't,
man, that's like if you can't get equality, you need equity. Before you can even get equality, we need some equity. We're not equal at all.
For real.
Yeah.
No, we're not.
So it does bother me. So I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing in spite of, because I know some black folks say, let's forget about this. I know how we be sometimes. We'll be hurt and it's too much pain, but we gotta address this and make it heal properly, though. We can't keep on passing this trauma along for generations.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. Yes. And this is something that needs to be passed on. It's a history, or as I like to say, our story that needs to be known, needs to be told, and needs to be known. It needs to be as well known as, George Washington and the whole cherry tree myth. And we know that the Japanese were the ones that gave this country the cherry tree. There wasn't no cherry tree around here.
That's right. But Columbus
myth after myth after myth.
Columbus didn't even make it to the Americas, right? But they still got Columbus Day, right? Saying that he discovered America.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He was a man that thought he was in India. I love it.
But everyone said we got to stop that because we teach our kids or children to respect folks that don't respect us. And that's a problem. Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
It is. And to love our enemies, you know?
Yeah, that's a problem. More than you love yourself. It's like when I don't mean to get off subject. I know you got to go, but it's like the Philando Castile thing where his mama went out on Facebook Live and a lot of people cringed. I said she had a right to say what she had to say. I don't think it was wrong what she said because she was hurt. She lost her son.
Right.
And I don't care how much money they paid her, it can't get her son back. That's not justice. Right. That's not justice because they knew they was guilty. The system knew he was guilty. That's why they had to pay her their money. But it's not going to bring her son back. So, I mean, you can't get justice. Like, you know, I tell people all the time, the devil is only is not qualified to give you mercy, only more hell. The devil is not qualified to give you mercy. So stop begging.
Exactly. Yes, sir. Brother, I want to say again, I so appreciate you calling me back and giving me this opportunity to talk about this, letting folks know. But I'm gonna get up early. I told you there's some things going on with my family. I'm gonna do some things.
There's so much stuff going on. The enemy is busy, man. But I'm gonna keep you prayed up with the ancestors. They keep on protecting you and guiding you on this very important mission. Cause there's a lot of distractions out here. Yeah.
I do appreciate that, and thank you so much for making contact. And you found out through Dr. Randy Short.
Yeah, he passed out the email. Randy Dr. Short be on it, and I said, man, why are they not really talking about this? This is so important to me. And it's black folks leading this charge. Because really the change will come to us because we are the people that shift the paradigm. We're the universal people. We're the alchemist people.
Right.
And we don't even understand how powerful we are. We the people that they base superheroes and comic books on. We the Wonder Woman and the Batman and he's Superman. We don't know that, though. We the X-Men. We think we don't know. Yeah, we don't know that, but they base all this stuff on us. They can't create no Jesse Owens or no Mike. You know what I'm saying? John Henry was a real man, but I'm saying like with us, I want our people to understand that it starts and ends with us.
Yes, it does.
It starts and ends with us. That's about it. We the Alpha Omega people.
I have got to meet you, brother.
Well, I'm about to come down there. I'm so excited because I got to do my part to promote this. But we'll work it out. I don't know, man. You don't be surprised you see me on the East Bridge. Man. Don't be surprised.
Okay.
So I record this stuff. But like, is there any way online? Like, I didn't mean to cut you out. Is there any way online to reach to get some more information on this? On these events?
Oh yes. Teachsociety.org.
Okay.
Teach TEACH Society. SOCIEAT. IETY.
We got it. Make sure you read it.
Yeah.
Teachsociety.org. Thank you so much, Brother Kennedy. In the words of Great Duke L.T., we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing, sir.
Okay, and thank you again, my brother.
Yes, sir.
My pleasure.
God bless. Good night.
Good night.